This is Off Track.
Alrighty. This is going to be a tough week of podcasting for your boy.
I think it's going to be our best week yet.
Let's see. So we didn't do a Tuesday episode because James thought that, we're in March and he deserved a vacation already. So he flew to Japan with his wife, whatever.
F1 work.
Well, I mean, not for like 10 days.
Fair.
So we were not able to do a Tuesday episode because James was in Japan, on his way to Japan, Japan adjacent. And I was in the sim actually working on, improving my career and making my life better. So we weren't able to do a Tuesday episode. Tim didn't want to just talk by himself, which I found incredibly surprising, actually.
Let's be very clear. I was more than willing to do that. I just think the amount of listeners we would have lost.
You weren't willing at all. You didn't offer once to carry the weight of the ship.
I would be down. I think we would lose half our subscribers if there was a me-only episode. Like, I don't know anything about racing. People are mad at how often I talk in episodes where you guys are there.
That's honestly, so am I. And then
cool. You got the rest of this? I'll sit out.
It's fine. I'll just talk to myself. And then we got Tim up in the wee hours of the morning on Wednesday to record your main episode, everyone. And James was kind enough to log on from his vacation. Not that it's asking too much, considering I logged on from my honeymoon. But apparently, which I find this very hard to believe, in Japan, the Wi-Fi isn't good or
not a tech-savvy nation, Japan.
Right.
Yeah,
they're really behind the times.
Yeah.
With
every time you see the video, you're like, man, I hope they catch up.
Right. They seem to be really struggling over there with electronics. So it's just going to be old Timbo and I on today's episode. Maybe James will pop in if he, I don't know, maybe goes to Korea where the technology might be better. I don't know.
Did you try the Wi-Fi that the toilet's on? Don't they have those smart toilets there?
They sure do. They sure do. Yeah.
So this is
it's an amazing country. I'm so happy for James because I don't think he's really ever been there other than passing through. And I know Becky's never been there. And it's definitely one of my favorite places in the world. So I'm actually going to plan and go at the end of the year. So I'm going to refer to him for all of the notes and the things and the stuff to do. You want to come with Kelly and I? You want to be our plus one?
Yeah.
Well, all right. I mean, hey, listen, that is an option for you now, Tim. You could come to Japan with us. Anyways, let's talk about let's get straight into thermal because a lot happened. A lot.
Okay, yeah.
A lot of unfortunate things happened, right, Tim?
So it seemed like from qualifying, I mean, one, it was awesome seeing you in the Fast Six. That was just it was good to see you back where you belonged. And then it seemed so. I thought going in you had like a P5, P6 car. I don't talk to you really on race weekends because I don't want to bother you, and it's not like you would respond anyway.
Correct.
So is that how you felt? Did you have a car that was about there, or do you feel like you outkicked?
I mean, you jumped straight into qualifying. I don't think. I think that's a little. I
didn't watch any
before the horse here. Well, that's okay. So we're going into the weekend. I think everyone was. Tires have been a big topic of conversation, right? They've been a big topic of conversation since St. Pete. They've been a big topic since the hybrid. We've talked about it on the show. And last year during the fake race, the fake money race, I mean, real money, but fake amount of money. There was, if people remember, in the final, there was 2 10-lap segments, right? Where the top 6 from each heat made it to the main event, and then the main event. James is here. Oh my goodness! Hello, James. It's so nice of you to take some time out of your vacation to join us.
You can just get right bent.
Get right what?
I think he said bent. Yeah,
bent. Okay.
Elbows out, huh?
So. It's still super delayed, so I don't know how this is going to work. But anyways, what I was saying was the main event for the fake race last year was 2 10-lap segments with a mandatory pit stop. So what you had some guys doing that were in the back was kind of go out and drive 20, 25 seconds slower than the leaders, knowing that after 10 laps, it was going to reset. And in theory, you would be starting the final part of the main event with much better tires than the guys in front of you, and you'd be able to drive through.
Yourself included in that strategy, right?
Myself included, yeah. Me and Colton did that, and I think a couple others. But my point is, this was last year in much cooler track temps on the primary tire, and the tire deg was already a big conversation. So going into the weekend, tire deg was at the top of everyone's mind, and sure enough, that is what we got. So unlike St. Pete, as I explained in the show going into this weekend, the alternate tire was not actually softer. The alternate tire was the same prime as last year. The prime was the harder tire, which is where they created or tried to create the separation between the two compounds. So going into the weekend, everything was about tires. Before I continue, James, is there anything you would like to add about the preview of thermal going into the weekend?
No, I think you handled it pretty well up to this point. So carry on.
Okay. So for us on the 20 car in practice, unfortunately, we had 2 hybrid failures, one in each practice, which was very frustrating for obvious reasons. Very frustrating for the crew. They had to split the car 3 different times to get hands on the MGU and the hybrid unit. Different failures each time. So for us, it's a very frustrating little object that is in the car currently. But to answer your question, Tim, I did think that we had a good car. We were in the 20s every practice session, but a lot of that was due to the issues that we were having.
Yeah.
So for us, we just needed a smooth session, and qualifying was the first time that we had a smooth session. I thought we were a 5th to 9th place car. It was cool that we were able to get in the Fast 6. Ultimately, the gap to the leaders in that session was too big. And for us, we really struggle with ultimately managing the tires throughout the lap. It's very difficult. It's a long lap. It's not the longest, but it's one of the longest laps we go to in IndyCar. So the tire deg was so bad that by the end of the lap, you were actually having the tires start to step down. So there were some things we needed to do to improve that going into the race. But I think what was pretty cool was we at ECR knew from the beginning that this was going to be a red race. Like we were convinced, and everyone else was like on the complete other spectrum. And it turned out to be a red race. And all I'm saying by bringing that up, it's pretty cool that as a small team with the smaller amount of resources and knowing that we don't have the tire guys in England that McLaren has and all this sort of thing, like we were able to accurately kind of predict, what the race was going to be. So I think that was a nice little feather in our cap. Yes, James.
The McLaren guys knew it was a red race.
Oh, did they?
Well, they started Lundgaard on used reds, and same with Pelot.
Sorry. I'm talking about like Friday. I'm not saying after warm up on Sunday. Like we used an extra set of primes in practice because we knew it was going to be a red race. Like it wasn't even a question for us.
And what gave you that confidence? Or is that like secret?
I can't tell you that. Yeah, I can't tell you that. Yeah.
I had a question before we move on from qualifying, because I watched qualifying with some friends of mine, and Alex, I've seen you do this in the past where you will wait in the pit and go out at the last possible second. And I understand that can be risky because you did that in the Fast 6, right? You went out and you just set one lap at the end. I understand that can be risky because like if a red comes out, it can throw off the timing or things like that. What is the possible advantage of waiting like that?
We knew it was a red race, so we didn't want to put. We didn't want to use 2 sets of used reds.
Wear on the tires.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, because I was just watching. I was like, I know there's a reason because obviously they didn't just forget to go. I don't know what it is, and I like to sound smart when I talk to my friends. I'm not, but they know even less about racing than me. So like, it's like teaching somebody piano when you're one lesson ahead on piano. It's like I
don't get that analogy. So
no, you never heard that.
So okay, I didn't watch qualifying, but James, there was a lot of controversy about some penalties that did or did not happen.
There was controversy about pineapple on pizza.
What was your viewpoint on all of that?
It's actually interesting that you bring that up. So there were a few instances of what could be perceived as interference. I assume this is what you're talking about.
Yep.
And ultimately, there were no penalties issued. So I actually had a conversation with IndyCar about this. And I was specifically asking about the Pato one?
No, there was Pato Dixon. There was Pato Dixon and Pelot someone else. I don't remember who.
Okay. Pelot someone else. Because to me, the Pelot someone else one looked fairly egregious because obviously everybody was trying to go slow on the outlap because of all the tire dag and everything that we've kind of already touched on.
Is it Pelot in one of the Christians?
What's that?
Was it Pelot in one of the Christians? I'm trying to remember who it was.
I honestly don't remember. I'm
sorry. I shouldn't have cut you off. That's not important.
No, that's right. It looked to me like Pelot had someone in front of him as well, but it's still kind of on the car going slow to get out of the way of the car to lap. Again, highlights the risks you take in kind of being out of sequence a little bit. Because again, whoever it was, I'm kicking myself. I don't remember who it was. But it doesn't matter. So when I asked IndyCar about it, IndyCar sort of acknowledged that they caught Pelot at a bad time and it was probably impeding. But it ended up becoming what IndyCar deemed a non-meaningful lap.
How is that theirs to decide?
So I had the same question. And I was like, well, that's, what if a red comes out and then everybody's lap is just their first laps or whatever? Fine. His point was, IndyCar's stance was, because both drivers, so as it happened, they're like, look, we like to give it a second and let the whole session play out so that they have time to really see the whole situation in totality and give themselves ample time to make an educated decision, which I respect. So his point was, at the end of the session, both of the drivers ended up in the Fast Six. They ended up advancing. So what is the point of penalizing someone on what ended up being a non-meaningful lap for the driver that was impeded? Had that driver not made it in, they would have looked at it differently, potentially. Had a bunch of other scenarios played out.
But this is still the same situation that we've talked about before in terms of race-to-race contact. You're going to get a penalty if the other guy's day is ended, meaning he can't continue.
Yeah,
if you just dump him from 4th to 20th, but he's still able to continue, there's not going to be a penalty. So it's like the rule isn't gray. The rule is black and white. So why is there some judgment calls involved?
I had the same argument. And the response was, IndyCar's position is they want to be involved in making the story about them and penalties as little as possible. So where I see the concept and I respect that they're trying to be involved in the outcome of a session or a race as little as possible, and I'm all for that. Where I struggle is just that it does leave it kind of gray, and it's tough to know if and when a penalty is coming. So again, I see their point. Both guys made it in, so it didn't matter. If one guy hadn't made it in, then maybe
fair.
So I kind of get it because ultimately you would have just ruined Pelot's day without it having.
Probably not. He still would have won.
Well, no, he still would have. Yeah, he still would have won by fight.
Yeah.
He only would have won by 8 seconds instead of 15 or whatever.
So that's fair. That's fine. Whatever. We don't really need to get into the nitty gritty of it because you're right. Both cars made it in. So while it may have been a difficult situation for whoever was involved with Pelot, it didn't really matter. However, there was a penalty that was issued this weekend. And I would like to discuss it because listen, despite maybe our TV rating would have been even worse had this not happened, but we had a fight. We almost had a fight. We almost had a big argument, or we had a big argument. It almost came to physical contact. I'm stunned that it didn't, between our guy, Scotty Mack, and also our guy, Devlin DeFrancesco. So
are we
James,
glossing over pineapple on pizza? and Gilmore Girls.
Dude,
Jennifer Lawrence.
Pineapple on pizza is fire. And you guys have known this. I grew up in California. Hawaiian pizza is phenomenal. Anyways,
I don't think I ever knew
From
this.
Canada, but okay.
No, but I'm not saying it's from California, but like it's a very West Coast thing. Okay.
I just feel like we've had a lot of pizzas together. Never once have you been like trying to sneak pineapple.
Because I know you hate it. And I'm not
something.
like a guy that like, oh, I have to have it to prove a point. Like, come on.
I mean, sometimes you are that guy, but
Sometimes
maybe
you're
not
very
with
much
pizza.
that guy. Yeah.
Shut up. Let's talk about this incident.
Night, because I promise
Okay.
you, I didn't choose Top Gun.
Devlin Scotty. Oh my God.
Yes.
Tim. Oh yeah. This is what we talked about at the beginning of the episode. Stop talking. People want to hear about Devlin and Scotty. So,
Based on
James.
Twitter, a lot of people want to hear about pineapple on pizza.
oh my
All
God.
I'm saying. All right, fine. Devlin and Scotty.
Okay. So, I saw the end result before I saw the incident, and I just thought the end result was hilarious. I just thought
Yes.
that was just the epitome of both of their personalities, not in a good way or a bad way. That was them. That was them raw. I loved every second of it. As much as I was surprised that there was no like pushing or shoving, I was super proud and impressed by both of them that there wasn't. And so it was like a very respectful kind of heated argument that I'm just so happy was captured on television. So what happened was, I'll tell you, at the back of the pack, which unfortunately I've been a few times, it's very difficult to get formed up. We've done a lot of work with IndyCar because in the past, you'd only have 4 or 5 rows formed up and then the green flag would go. So IndyCar has done a lot to try and slow the safety car down earlier in order to slow the leader down so that the whole field can bunch up and get into, whatever it is, 13 rows of 2 and, have a nice packed up, bunched up start for the fans, for the TV, for all the competitors, everyone. That's the fair thing to do. So they've done a really good job of that, but it's still difficult for the last 4 or 5 cars to really get to the back of the line, get paired up before the leaders are going, right? And you obviously want to be in that position because you want to have the best opportunity to be close to the cars in front of you to have an opportunity to go forward. So what Scott was doing was he was trying his best to like get up to the back of the pack because you can't obviously just go full throttle into the back of them because there's a yo-yo effect and you got to kind of time it and it is harder than you would think. And at the same time, you're trying to put temp in your tires into your brakes. You're trying not to drive offline. And so I think as much as this was Devlin's fault, I do think Scott was a little bit responsible because honestly, I don't think he's really started at the back very much. And so I think he may have had just a small lapse in the fact that you're so focused on getting to the back. You're so focused on keeping your tires clean. You're so focused on getting a run into turn 1 that he probably forgot that like Devlin should have been right there or would have been right there. Or maybe he's so used to already being formed up that like he can see the car to his inside. And in this instance, Devlin wasn't quite there yet because Devlin was trying to do the same thing. And Devlin is frantic. Like he's frantic out of the car. He's frantic in the car. So he was probably stressed that he wasn't going to get there in time. So kind of maybe fired it into turn 15 a little bit too quick. And Scott wasn't really giving him room. And they touched. And Devlin got a drive through. So I thought it was 80% Devlin's fault, 20% Scott's fault. I'd be interested to know what you think of it, James. And if you love the fight as much as I did.
I'll be honest. I didn't look back at the incident since the race, and because it was the start of the race, we kind of like showed it once from. We only really caught it. I want to say I've only seen it from Scott's onboard.
So have I.
Okay, so yeah, I know we replayed it, but also just the race was going on, so we didn't focus on last and second last place too much.
Why did
while
something
the race
go
was
on with the
happening.
broadcast that distracted you?
Not at that point. Too soon. But yes, no, I think fundamentally from what I remember seeing, yes, I would also put more of the blame on Dev. And I found the fight afterwards kind of hilarious. It was one of those things too, right? Where like Scott's day went from bad to worse because his hybrid ended up having issues, join the club. And so He was
I
just,
have no
he was
sympathy.
just- yeah. Take a number, get in line. So that was probably part of it. But like the whole, I'll show you the video. He goes, okay, show me the video. And then it's, well, I'm going to go find the video. And then they just kind of walked off. And it was just sort of like, it was a lot of that. Like, well, I'm going to read your phone. Okay, read my phone. Well, I don't want to read it. You know, it was just like a weird, like relationship argument I felt. But look, I love seeing the passion. That's what this sport's all about and needs more of. So I'm not against it at all.
All right. So that was a big topic. Obviously, tires were a big topic. We all could have predicted the fact that a tire deg race was going to go to Palou. Like that's not even like, I don't even think anyone would have ever questioned that. Obviously, great job by Pato and McLaren, because quite frankly, that isn't usually their strong suit, and they were by far the second best car. Amazing that it was an all green race. Yes.
Yes. Before the race, you'd put money on Palou because it's a tire race, right? And he was starting third.
For sure.
And again, a team and drivers that maybe don't have that reputation were ahead of him. So you're like, yeah, for sure. But when he came out of the last stop 12 seconds behind the leader, I was like, maybe not. Maybe he's going to come up a little short. Oh boy, did he not come up short. Did he come up so long.
Phrasing?
One of the longest.
Arguably longer than average.
Phrasing?
Yeah, that guy's, what's that?
Phrasing? Are we?
No.
Nope.
No, he came out long.
Okay.
Yeah, real
All right.
long.
Yeah.
He came out of the pits
What was
hard
the girth situation?
and ended up long.
That's
Oh,
awesome.
that's gross what you said.
It's pretty cool to come out hard and then still be long.
But here's the thing. So here's the thing. Christian did a really good job of keeping Palou behind him. He had a lot of pace in hand. And had he gotten around Christian, he would have closed that gap up, whatever. But he didn't. So he pit, and it was like 12 seconds or whatever. And then, so like, let's like add a couple seconds he could have had there. He closed up that 12 seconds, passed Pato, and then ended 8 to 10 seconds ahead of him. And the last 4 laps, he was just cruising behind Nolan. Like he didn't even try to pass. It was like 3 cars all racing for position at the end of the lead lap. He didn't even bother pushing the matter because he was 8 to 10 seconds ahead. It was the teammate car of the car that he was racing. Not saying anything would have happened, but that's just one extra layer of risk that's not necessary to take. And those guys were running Pato's pace anyway. So it's not even like Pato was closing in. So like he could have conceivably won that race by 30 seconds.
Do you know that there was a period of time before he got to Nolan? There was a period of time where he was 3.5 seconds quicker than anyone.
Did anybody else have new softs in that last stint?
Power.
And Power also drove through the field and ended up P6. Well,
I will say, and I'm not taking. He was phenomenal. I'm not taking anything away from what Will did. There was a huge advantage to the guys that did not make it into round 2, a massive pace advantage. Exactly. But there was. I mean, shoot, Joseph didn't make it into round 2. There was a lot of good cars that didn't make it into round 2, and Will was the only one that really did anything with it. So I'm not taking anything away from him. But yes, Will and Palou in the last stint had a massive upper hand on pretty much everyone in the top 12 because they were on the only guys on new soft. So credit to them. But still, at some point, Palou had to run used reds. And he still made those work just fine. So it's not that he had some tire advantage because he had some failure or whatever and just had more tires than everyone else. Like he did the same strategy as everyone else and just still curb stomped all of us. Which I talked to Colton. I talked to Colton afterwards, and I was like, man, it's a tough look for all of us. Like you can't sugarcoat this any way other than he is just mopping the floor with 26 other drivers and engineers and everyone.
Everybody outside of the top 7 in points is already a full max point race weekends tally behind him in the championship.
Do you know
2 races?
Do you know that there's only one driver that has finished in the top 5 both races, and he happens to have won both of them?
Well, that explains part. I mean, because I remember seeing that and being like 8th place is 54 points behind Pelot. You get 54 points for a perfect weekend, and he would win on a tiebreak. So 7th place is still within a full perfect race week, providing Pelot doesn't start a round, because by starting he gets like a handful of points. So it's really sixth place.
No,
it's
dude, we're fine because he's known to like just throw stuff away.
Yeah, no, he's definitely known as like a peak early and then taper off kind
right,
of guy.
Like, and he's definitely not a guy that like can maximize stuff like when he has a broken front wing and
when you hear
stuff.
Pelot, you don't think consistency. You know, that doesn't jump to mind.
Yeah.
No.
We always talk about best worst finish. Right now, his worst finish on the year is first. So there's that.
Yeah, but at least he was fighting a fever this weekend.
Was he actually? I didn't even know that.
Oh,
I'm not gonna lie.
He was sick as a dog.
Was it? I think I know the answer to this, but was it like not that? I know it was very hot, but was it not that physical because you were driving around 14 seconds off the pace?
Oh my god, it was the easiest. I think it was the easiest race that I've done in IndyCar. No, sorry, road and street course race that I've done in IndyCar. Just because.
You're 4 to 5 seconds off the pace.
And we've talked about on the show, like the physical effort that's required to get that extra half second of lap time, like is massive. The physical effort to drive within a second of, the peak lap time, still pretty high. But when you get to 2.5 to 5.5 seconds off the ultimate pace of the car, it is not physically a challenge. Like it's mentally taxing because you're so careful with your inputs and your right foot, and you're just staring at tire temps and you're trying to manage the tools to move the temperature bias forward and rearwards, and you're trying to like, okay, if the left rear is really hot, I'm going to try and balance it out by going faster in left-hand corners than right-hand corners, and that sort of thing you're thinking about and such, but you're not physically working hard. You're kind of just cruising around, which honestly is it's probably a blessing, because that place, if the tires didn't deg and it was 90 degrees, like that would have been immediately to the top of the list of the most physical places we go, because there is a lot of corners. There is some very high speed, high load sections. Like in qualifying, it's hard work. So I think that I'm not complaining that it wasn't hard, but I think it was a little bit like it wasn't an enjoyable race, which is unfortunate to say, because I feel like obviously the audience thought the same thing, which I don't think is necessarily fair. And I want to talk about that for a second, because
we had a last 10 laps pass for the win. I don't think it was a bad race to watch.
I don't think it was a bad race to watch at all. I think there was a lot of elements
I was entertained by.
I think there was a lot of elements of the race that were interesting. Obviously, as you said, there was a battle for the win. There was a great battle with Christian and Pelot. There was a lot of stuff happening in the midfield. I mean, Power drove from 21st to 6th. Like, there was a lot of things that happened despite it being a caution-free race. I think it was an okay race. I think what really hurt, and I don't want to talk about the scheduling conflicts and the NASCAR head-to-head and all of this stuff, because ultimately that's completely out of our control. That's the network's decision. There's always going to be something else on TV. That doesn't matter. What is sad, and I don't know if we should have predicted this or could have predicted this or would have predicted this, but the fact that thermal has such this negative connotation in everyone's mind is ultimately, in my opinion, what killed the event on TV. And I really struggle to understand why. I understand that this isn't like the epitome of IndyCar racing. There's no history of the track. There's not the same feel that a Long Beach would have. Yes.
It's this feeling. It's this perception that it's the race that's priced out of the market for quote unquote real race fans. And I just don't buy that as an argument, because like I can't afford to go to Monaco for the Grand Prix, like that's still a sold out race every year. People still
Yeah.
tune in and watch
It's a great
it.
point.
Most
It's a
F1
great point.
races are insanely like that's not an excuse, right? Like I get that,
But that
some
seems
people,
to be the sentiment online.
100%. No, I agree.
Right.
I don't know what I don't know where people get off using that as an excuse to not if anybody didn't watch the race on TV because the perception is it's a rich person's playground and I'm not welcome there or I can't go there or whatever. Dude, again, I got in trouble for saying this about the whole Arlington, Texas Motor Speedway thing. You are not the fan that we need. Because if you're not going to support the series and watch it no matter where we're racing, like please, because I'm struggling to see how that helps.
So the one counter, and I'm going to say I agree. I was entertained by the race. The one counter I'll give is last year, if you watch that, where you and Colton were 20 seconds off the pace to stay for that, and I understand last year wasn't a points race. It didn't really seem like it seemed kind of like a joke last year with that whole thing with the
for sure
the caution in the middle
I
of it.
didn't see anybody
so
online
if you're coming off of that
on last year.
I know, but if you're coming off of that as your last experience with it, I can understand why maybe you don't have that.
Listen.
I don't agree with that. I watched it and I thought it was an entertaining race.
People that are fans of this sport, people that watch St. Pete, everyone knows that thermal was going to be a real race. Like that's not a reason. I also think, and it has to change. It has to change. And whoever is in charge of this needs to, I don't care what the roadblocks are, fix it. The 3-week gap is insane. Like it's just insane. We have so much investment and so much momentum coming off the Super Bowl, going into St. Pete, record TV numbers, freaking everything's good, everything's badass, and then we disappear. I don't care why you don't think you can do it. Do it. Put another race in. End of discussion.
Yeah.
So obviously there was one other big story coming out of thermal, and that was the hiccup with the Fox broadcast. And I don't know who. Well, there was also the other story was your Christopher Walken impression. So what happened?
Thank God you didn't say anything worse.
I know.
Dude.
I was thinking about how bad that could have been with what I've cut out of this show.
Okay, so let me tell you the story. So we're calling a race, talking about something. All of a sudden, every screen in the booth goes black. We're like, huh.
Now, were like the lights still on in the
lights were still on, and like the no signal thing was coming across the screens. I'm like,
oh boy.
Huh. But it was one of those moments where like Townsend even looked at me. He was like, 14 years of broadcasting. I've never had this. And we're like, I don't know who to look at. I don't know what to do. I don't know what the hierarchy is here. I don't know what the protocol is for this. So we're just, I don't know what to do with my hands. Because obviously we're not the technical people. We're not going to be able to necessarily fix it. But if there's also anything that we can do to help, we would like to be able to at least.
Did you try turning it off and turning it back on again?
I mean, for all intents and purposes, that's what we did as a group, as a collective. And so, one of the breakers went on one of the trucks, which, I haven't heard like the post-mortem on it. The running theory was that because it was so hot and those trucks
wasn't that hot.
Dude, in the sun, it is. And like those trucks operate. Like
I was in the sun.
Cranking out heat. You had some airflow when you're just stationary on asphalt. And, and again, these trucks have a lot of equipment and they need to be cooled and whatever. I don't know if that's ultimately what it was. That was the running theory at the time. And the reboot process takes about 15 minutes. So we kind of we had phone calls with people in the truck and we established what had happened. There was a couple different ideas thrown around. At one point, we nearly just fired up an Instagram live to try to keep going. That was kibosh for a few different reasons. But everybody on the ground with Fox and IMSP did a remarkable job. When you realize how complex these things are, did a remarkable job getting everything back up and running when we did. When it did get fired back up, it's a process, right? There's like stages and you got to make sure that everything's talking to each other because there's pictures and there's audio and there's graphics and there's timing and scoring. And it's not just like you flick the switch and it all comes back on, right? This is a very complex set of systems. So at one point we got pictures back And then, our producer's telling us in our ear, like, okay, we need you to talk. We need to get our audio worked out, whatever that means. I don't know. So we were just check, 1, 2, talk, Will, Townsend, James, whatever, just kind of going through all this stuff. And they were like, just keep talking. So we just kind of started jokingly commentating on the race as if, because like they need us to just keep talking to make sure everything was going. And after that was going around for a while, I was like, man, everybody's like having a stressful minute. Let's bring a little bit of levity into the situation, try to give everyone in the truck a laugh. And for some reason, Christopher Walken came out. I don't know why. I don't know where it came from. Maybe it's because I'm watching Severance right now. And I did not know in that moment that somewhere in the world that feed was going to people.
I think it was
I got
app,
a text.
right?
I don't know. I don't even know. I just got a text from a buddy of mine, and I'm like, in Europe, and he's like, great Christopher Walken impression. I was like, what did you say? I'm sorry, what? And then I go on Twitter, and it's just like, I'm like, oh no, that was my immediate first thought. Was like, what did I say before that?
Sunk, right, like just trying to remember every word that I just said.
Exactly right. So
Alex Rossi's a dumb bitch.
No, he said that during qualifying.
I'd say that now.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I said that in the top of the show on network. Yeah, that was my opening.
Whatever.
But yes, we got back here. But what was so funny about it is, in all honesty, so we got our telestrator, right? And when the whole power went when the signal got lost, the telestrator froze at the last thing. And so when it fired back up, we had this, we were keeping tally. So we got a laptop with timing and scoring up. And luckily from where the booth was, we had a pretty good view of the track because we were up on top of that timing scoring tower. We got a 360-degree view of the track. So we were doing our best to keep track of what was happening on timing and scoring because it was right in the middle. It was right before a pit cycle started. So a whole pit cycle happened. And we were taking notes and keeping track of who pit when and all this stuff so that we could put together a little summary of what people missed. And the best part was it was frozen, had the top 5. And then when we came back 10 laps later, full pit cycle, top 5 was the same. Like, you guys didn't miss much. Here's the quick recap.
I mean, so anyway, maybe that's the argument against it being a great race. Anyways, so listen, thank you for hanging in there in order to, get the majority of the broadcast out. I know people like to point fingers at that. Stuff happens. Ultimately, they didn't miss really anything. It won't happen again. There will be adjustments made. Guys, don't be and not support a race just because you didn't buy the ticket, because that doesn't make sense. Like, you still listen to freaking Taylor Swift even if you don't pay her outrageous concert prices.
Great point.
There's a lot of stuff happening on the eastern part of the world where James is right now, going into Japan, not this weekend, but next weekend. There's rumors swirling about Red Bull and Red Bull doing Red Bull things. So tune in next week to hear all about that.
This has been Off Track with Hinch and Rossi. Off Track is part of the SiriusXM Sports Podcast Network. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, please give a 5-star rating and leave a review. Subscribe today wherever you stream your podcasts. We are at Ask Off Track on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to follow us on Twitter, we're at Hinchtown and at Alexander Rossi. If you want to follow Tim, though we have no idea why you would, he's at the Tim Durham on Twitter. Find us on YouTube and subscribe to our channel for exclusive video content. Off Track is produced by Tim Durham, and by that we mean Tim.